Hello everybody, this is Kay and welcome to my channel, Junking with Gigi. I have been wanting for some time to do a video on tab binding, and I have a couple of examples here of a couple things that I have made using this method of binding. It is a really different and unique but fun and interesting way to bind single pages together, and I'll show you a couple of examples here of things that I've made using this tab binding method. I actually made my planner for 2024 using this method, and I started with just index cards that I put them each month on. You can see they're all individual pages, and it's called tab binding because you connect the pages one at a time using little tabs of fabric. You can use other materials, I suppose, such as paper or cardstock, but I think that the fabric is going to hold together better. But the nice thing about tab binding is if you have a bunch of like single pages that you want to bind together in a book, this is a good method to use for that. And another nice thing about it is when you open it up, they all lay nice and flat. And you can see, I think I have about, with the months and then the covers, I think I have 14 pages bound together here in my planner for 2024 that I made using this method. This is just covering up my last name for privacy's sake. This is another one that I made for my grandson. He's a little over 2 months old, and for all of my grandchildren, I am writing them letters to save and give to them someday. So all of my grandchildren have a little book that has letters from Gigi in it. Gigi is what my grandchildren call me. That's why I call my channel Junking with Gigi, for any of you who might be new and didn't already know that. But I did cover up his name. That's what this piece of paper is covering here, is just his name. And you can see by looking at the sides here, I used denim pieces of paper for the tab binding on this one. And I have a piece of chipboard with a little dragon image. And then I just, for his, I decided to use envelopes. Since I'm writing him letters, I wanted to use envelopes so that I would have spots to tuck in the different letters that I write him. Make sure I cover his name back up. So that is what I want to do with you today, is show you how I use this tab binding method. Now, this is not a new method by any stretch of the imagination. I have not created this myself. I've watched many other creators using this method when it comes to binding individual pages together. I definitely don't want to take credit for creating this method, but I use it and I know how to do it, so I'm going to share with you how to do that today. Now, what I want to use collaged envelopes, and what I've done, I have about 14 of them here. I'm not sure I'm going to put all of them into one book, but I've collaged these envelopes front and back and on the flap, and then I glued the flap down inside, so I have just a bunch of pockets here without the flap to open and close. And this is what I want to use to bind today using the tab binding method. Alright, so I think I will use 8 of my collaged envelopes, and with the front and back cover, that will make 10 pages that will be binding together with tabs today. So I have this piece of chipboard, came from some packaging of some sort. I had it in my junk box. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to make these the same size as the envelopes. I'm just going to line this envelope up. We want our front and back covers to be the same size. They can be slightly larger, but I'm going to make them as close to the same size as I can as the envelopes. So I'm going to outline there, and then I'm going to line my envelope up against that line. Okay, I'm going to take my metal ruler and my craft knife now and cut out these 2 cover pieces. So I have a front cover, 8 envelopes, and a back cover that I'm going to bind together today into a little bit of a, I guess you could call it a pocketbook kind of, because it'll be all made up of pockets. So I'm going to set those aside for now, and the next thing I'm going to do is prepare my fabric. So I have a number of scraps here that I want to use to do this, and I'm going to cut these into approximately, let's see, how wide is this? I kind of like the width of this. It is 1.5 and a little bit more, but I'm going to cut them this direction into about 1-inch pieces. So what I'm going to do, grab my fabric scissors. First of all, I'm going to cut off this little end that's kind of where, like the selvage, I think that's called. I'm going to cut that off. And I'm going to cut one 1-inch piece. And this is not going to be exact. You can be exact if you want to, but I'm really not worried about it being exact. So what I have here is a 1 by approximately 1.5, a little more than that, inch piece. And I'm just going to use this as kind of a template to cut a whole bunch of these little pieces. And I think for 10 pages, I'm going to need probably about 20 to 25 little pieces of cloth, and I'm going to use a variety of fabrics here, but I'm just going to use this first one as kind of a template to cut all of my pieces of fabric. All right, I did a lot of that off camera because that takes a little bit. I've got 23 pieces cut out here. They're approximately the same size. Some of them are a little raggedy on the edges. I don't mind that. I kind of like that look. And then I wanted to tell you, if you want to know ahead of time exactly how many tabs to cut, what you do is you start with 3. We're going to use 3 tabs to start with on our front cover, and then with every page we go back and forth between 3 and 2 tabs. So that would be 3 tabs. On this page we'll be using 2 tabs. On this page 3. On this page 2, and so forth. Okay, I've got 23 tabs of fabric cut out here, which is what I need for the 10 pages that I'm going to have in this tab bound journal. So I'm just picking these up in the order that I have them arranged here to put on my journal. Okay, I'm going to be using my PVA glue for this. I've poured a little bit out into a container just to make it easier, and a little bit of a kind of a small flat brush to glue my tabs on. So I am going to start with my cover, and for the cover, you know, we always bind on the left hand side, so I'm going to take my first 3 pieces and kind of spread them out how I want them to show. This is going to show on the front cover, so I actually think I want this flowery one in the middle, and I'm going to put them about halfway across the tab. And like I said before, mine aren't perfect, but what you want to do here is make sure that you leave enough space in between your 3 tabs to put another tab on, because when we flip it over to the next page, we're just going to be adding 2 tabs, and they're going to go in between these 3. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball and get these where I want them and glue them on, about half of it onto this front cover. And I've got a little piece of parchment paper here, so I can not get glue all over my mat. So I'm just going to kind of paint that on and place that down. And same with this one, about half of it. A little bit of PVA glue. And glue it down. You can be precise as you want. You can measure and make marks where to glue your tabs. I'm not really interested in doing that on this particular project. I just kind of wanted this one to be a little bit quicker of a video and a little bit eclectic and, you know, junk journal-y, not perfectly bound. Like some projects I will do that on. I'll measure and make things more exact, but I didn't want to do that on this particular project. Okay, so that's our first page, or our cover. That's our cover. And so what I'm going to do here for our second page, these are going to go together like this. But before I glue these tabs onto this second page, let me move these a little bit out of the way. I want to put my 2 tabs on this one that will go to the next page. So I'm going to use these 3 tabs as kind of a guide of where to put my 2 tabs on my next page so that I don't overlap any tabs. You don't want to overlap your tabs because then they will get in the way of each other and you won't be able to open and close. Your tab edges have to be clear from each other. I hope I'm making sense. I'm not always the best teacher, but I'm trying here. So I'm going to put those 2 tabs about right there. Once again, I'm going to get my PVA glue, put it on about half of this cloth tab, and glue it down about halfway between the 2 tabs from the previous page. And the same with this one. So I have my 3 tabs on my cover and my 2 tabs on my next page. So I'm going to flip these around. I'm going to put my cover on top there, get my edges even. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this over, and these first 3 tabs that I put on the cover are going to be folded over and glued to the second page, leaving the 2 that I attached to this page available for the next page. And you'll see how that works in just a minute. So I'm gonna glue, hang on, I need to put my parchment paper under here so I don't get glue on my mat. Make sure I'm even. And if your pages are a little bit uneven, you would just want to make sure you have this spine edge even. So I'm going to put PVA glue on all 3 of the first tabs that I put on the cover. And then fold that up and over. I'm going to do one at a time because the PVA glue actually dries pretty quickly. And you just want to make sure that you skip those 2 that you added to that second page. And the final tab, and this basically is all there is to attaching the cover to the first page of our tab bound journal. So our cover is attached to the first pocket envelope page of our tab bound journal like that, and you've got these 2 tabs sticking out, ready to attach to your third page. So I'm going to grab my third page, but before I attach those two to that, I want to put the next 3 onto this page to be bound to the 4th page. So I'm going to take my next 3 tabs, and I went ahead and moved my glue and stuff over here so I didn't have to constantly be reaching across. And you just kind of can use this as a guide to get them approximately in the same spot. But like I've been saying, it doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to take 3 and attach them to this page right along on these 3 spots. Again, about halfway across the length of your tab. Okay, I've got those 3 tabs attached to that 3rd page. Now I'm going to flip it over. I'm going to get the spine edges even. And I'm going to glue the 2 tabs from the previous page over the edge of this 3rd page. I got a string on my brush there. Okay. So you just don't want to get confused and to which tabs you are folding over and binding. It's the one from the previous page, the 2 from the previous page, not the 3 that you just put on this page.
Over. And getting some strings, I'm gonna have to maybe trim some strings when I'm done. And fold that over. I'm getting very gluey fingers too.
Gonna trim a couple of strings off here. Okay, so now you have your cover, your first page, your second page. Now we're going to move on to our 3rd page, which I'm just going to, since this one has 3, I'm going to do 2 tabs on this one, sort of lining them up with these 2. So I've got my next 2 pieces of cloth. I'm going to put here and here and glue those on. And you just continue on in this manner until you get to the end of the book, until it's completed. So I'll probably speed this up a little bit because this, you know, isn't a super speedy process, but you'll still be able to see what is going on as we add tabs and alternate the number of tabs we're adding and where we're positioning them for the remainder of this book. So since we just put 2 tabs on this page, we're going to flip it over, but we're going to glue the 3 from the previous page. So I've just continued on for all the pages with that same process, alternating the 3 and the 2 tabs. So I'm just attaching my last page here with 2 tabs. And then we will be ready to attach our back cover, which is simply going to be using the 3 tabs that I attached to my last page. So you don't add any more tabs to your back cover. You just place it on there, line it up, and glue those last 3 tabs down. 3 or 2 or however many you end up with. I like to use an even number of pages. That way you end up with 3 tabs on the front cover and 3 tabs on the back cover. And I think that's a little bit more stable than if you used an odd number of pages, including front and back cover, you would have just 2 tabs going over this final, your back cover. And I guess that would work, but it seems to me like that might be a little less stable than having an even number of pages and having 3 tabs going front and back cover. Of course, you're always going to start with 3 tabs on your front cover. At least that's the way I do it. And there we have it. So we've got our front and our back cover, and we have 8 envelope pocket pages and in between. Let me clear these things away. And you can see how it lies so nice and flat. And even if you fill up your pockets with items, it's still gonna open and lay nice and flat like this all the way through the book. And then you can decorate your covers, of course, any way you see fit. And I will decorate this. I'm just not sure how I want to decorate it yet. So that is it for this little tutorial video on how to tab bind a journal. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you've been inspired to maybe try this method of binding with individual pages that you might have. And I thank you so much for watching today. God bless.